that. And I'm like, why isn't this available to everyone in the workforce?
Well, so assuming that you're not asking rhetorically, you have to go through a little bit of the history here. And I'm not going to give you a complete history, but I'm going to just give a little snapshot history of where kind of unions came from. They were born out of the necessity for men who were being like legitimately abused and put into work environments that were genuinely deadly. And there was like a mortality rate that went along with a lot of these jobs. And so the part of the union idea came from that, well, we want to have a safer work environment so that we don't die during our work day. And that we lose fingers or arms or eyeballs, things like that. Like that was the first bit of it. And it was put upon companies to say, hey, if you're going to hire people, then you actually have to at least give some kind of minimal safety to workers. Now, that's gone a little too far nowadays, I might argue. But, and there's a lot of people that are looking for things to fight about safety-wise, to justify their jobs in the safety departments. That notwithstanding, that was the original part of a lot of unions. The other aspect, when it comes to the money aspect, there actually was, and still is to a great degree, a good argument for the money side of it, which is that, let's say that you're a guy who works at a company and you run a wire draw machine. I'm not going to go into an explanation of what that is. You can look it up. But let's say you work a wire draw machine. That's your job. Your whole job all day, every day, is to make wire. And different size wires, different gauge wires, and like that's your whole job. And the odds of you ever moving up in that company are basically zero because there is no where for you to go. Like you're it. There's just the owner of that company, maybe a manager or something like that, and then you. Like that's it. There's no hierarchical structure of like layer upon layer upon layer of middle management and pretend jobs and Zoom meeting people and stuff like that. Like there's none of that stuff existed. So it was recognized that because somebody would eventually become efficient at their job, sooner or later, you're going to become 100% efficient or as close to 100% efficient as you can. And that you were worth more than you were starting off. So if you were starting off and you were working this wire draw machine, maybe you were a little slow. But after maybe a couple of months, you got to the point where you were keeping up with everybody else who'd been there for years. So you were worth more. So it was like, okay, if they've been there for this long and they're doing a good job, like they need to have some kind of raise. Enter later on inflation. And we're talking about the real argument of inflation, not what you see on TV. The real argument of inflation was you are printing money to worthlessness, but you're paying the workers this much money here in terms of dollars, but you're destroying the value of the dollar. So you need to give them more dollars because, well, the government and the people that you keep supporting, you being corporate America, if you want to call it that, at the time, you keep supporting these people and they are destroying the value of the currency. So you need to keep giving them raises to this job because remember, they can't promote, right? That's the job they're going to do. So because you can't promote them, you have to give them raises because you're destroying their spending power. And good union negotiators used to know this stuff, right? They don't anymore. Union negotiators now, from what I've seen, are not very good at this kind of stuff. They don't really understand the finances of it all. They know how to talk to a camera and they know how to say, we want more stuff, but they don't know how to articulate why that needs to go up. And it's because the currency is being destroyed. Okay? So, and again, like I said, those guys who knew all that stuff, those guys are long gone. They're like probably 50 years gone now. So what you have now is just a bunch of people who don't really know how to negotiate, and they think like a 10% raise over the next 5 years is really good, even though real inflation is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 25% annually. Okay, I mean, I know that everybody looks at the inflation numbers and they say, well, in 2020, you've had about 25% inflation in 5 years, so 5% inflation compounded per year. That would be bad enough if that were true. It's actually much worse than that. We just have to look at our grocery bill to see that. So to your question, and I am answering this, to your question is why it's not available in certain industries. Number one, in accounting, I'm not picking on you. I'm just saying, in accounting, you probably aren't going to lose a finger. Your 10 key isn't probably going to, I mean, the worst you're going to get is maybe carpal tunnel. So that's number one problem. Number two is that I want to be as honest as I can with you. Accounting is one of these jobs that wouldn't exist in a normal, it really isn't. Most owners of businesses, they know how much money they have. They don't need to have a pool of accountants. And the only reason most accounting exists now, particularly the big four, is because of taxes. That's it. And keeping up with all of the ridiculous regulations that should have gone away a long time ago. And that's really the answer. So they know they can burn people out because they know that right behind you, as soon as you decide you don't want to do this anymore, they've got a whole bunch of other people they'll import from other countries to do it. And they'll pay them money they'll pay them less money, knowing full well that the currency valuation is a higher rate of exchange in their countries. That is the truth. You may not, anybody watching this, anybody who gets this far in the video may not like it, but that's the truth. And that's why you have so many people right now in America that are starting to say, look, why are we importing more and more and more people? Like, we really kind of have to deal with Americans. And that would be the case. That ordinarily would be the case. So if you weren't importing more people, then these companies would have to actually take you seriously. They would. They'd be forced into that position where they would say, either leave the country and be gone, or deal with Americans. And if Americans are saying, hey, listen, they're giving your employees, or your potential employees and your employees are giving you feedback, and they're saying, hey, listen, the average house price now, the median house price is $450,000. You're going to have to make with the dough to get me to come here and do this. No different than going back to our history of the wire draw machine guy. The wire draw machine guy would look at the job and say, dude, hey, I mean, if I'm going to be here, risking my fingers, which is very common on wire draw, then you're going to have to pay me for that risk. No different than insurance companies. Insurance companies demand a premium for risk, right? I mean, this is all just really simple stuff, but it's not stuff that's talked about in schools, because if everybody understood this kind of stuff, then they wouldn't be easy to take advantage of, would they? Yeah, I mean, this is just years of experience talking, as a business owner and doing blue collar work and such, and as a blue collar business owner and doing all those jobs that they claim Americans won't do. I'm the guy who does those things. So, yeah, I mean, I hope that kind of answers your question. And I'm not trying to pick on accounting. I'm just pointing out that, like, an office type environment isn't quite the same. And that's where the origins of that came from. Do I think it should apply? Well, I think it would apply. But then again, you have to actually close the borders and not let everybody and their brother just come here willy-nilly because they'll do it cheaper.